Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where and it's our privilege to show up and serve you and to hopefully brighten your day a little bit with some purposeful content. Today, I'm excited to talk with a beautiful spirit, somebody that really, like, you come across her content wherever on social media, her website, or just in her presence at one of her classes. You can't help but feel good. You feel lighter. You feel like, man, I'm doing good and maybe I can do more. This young lady is the founder and CEO of Wholesome Alchemy, a movement company focused on expanding consciousness and fostering community throughout various spiritual and educational initiatives. She is a yoga teacher. She runs online courses, transformational retreats internationally, and a monthly sisterhood circle. Her work emphasizes authenticity, leadership, courage, community, heart, and intuition, aiming to honor and celebrate the uniqueness in each individual. And that really sums up Courtney Bohlman, who was also a guest with us way back in episode 115, which is kind of why I wanted to come back to her. Is back then she was just launching this and she had dreams and ideas and goals. And now it's coming to fruition. Now she's successful. It's building. So I wanted to come back to her to see what that success has been like, to see what it's been like to have her dreams come true. And honestly, a lot of times when our dreams come true, we find new problems that we didn't even anticipate or expect, and new ways to grow and to continue to grow and solve problems, to move forward. So I wanted to touch base with her and bring her back to me, one, because she's a great spirit to share with all of you, and two, to see what lessons she learned. So I hope you enjoy this week's interview with Courtney Bohlman. Courtney, for only the second time I get to say this, welcome back to the show. You're the second guest that we've had twice, and I can't thank you enough for joining us. So welcome again to the On Purpose podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jerrod. Great to be here.
Man, it's crazy, like, seeing you. I haven't talked to you, like, we haven't seen each other in person in a couple years, but I've been watching your growth and just seeing all the amazing stuff you were doing. And I was like, man, let's bring her back and just share this with the community so they can see the growth full circle from episode 115. I have to look at the date on that, but it would have at least been 3 years ago.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
That happens in 3 years.
It does, right? Whether we're guiding it and intentional about it, or we're just sitting back passively, things are going to be changing around us.
Yep. Time keeps going.
Yeah, and there's definitely one thing I would never say about you, and that's passivity. You are very much in the driver's seat and guiding your life. And I just want to thank you for all the lives you're touching out in the world and all the people you're helping to find their best self on that day when they cross your path. You're truly a special human and a being, and I just wanted to make sure you feel honored to be on here, like we feel honored to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Courtney, since you've been on, before we get into the growth of Wholesome Alchemy and your book and all your travels, you know how we got to always warm you up. Like, I need to know some more off the cuff stuff. Are you ready for this?
All right.
And it's different now. So if you tried to remember,
I can't remember what you asked me last time, though. I was literally just like, what did he ask me last time?
Well, that's good because it's not the same. So we're progressive too. Honestly, I had to warm up the same for a long time. And then I started getting just people ask, like, it was the same answer. So I was like, I need to know new stuff. All right. So here we go. You ready?
Oh, it was your superpower. That was your
Superpower was one of them. Yeah. Food on a deserted island, superpower, book. But you ready for the new ones?
New. What do you got?
All right. Where are we going? Coffee or tea?
Oh, tea. Coffee, I can't do caffeine. I get like really, I'm a lot. I'm already a lot, but like me on caffeine is like uncomfortable for everyone.
That's by far the funniest answer I've had so far. I love it. All right. Combination meal, brunch or dinner?
Whoa, well, I've never heard of dinner before.
See, I feel like I might have made that one up, but I like it.
But I would probably say brunch because I love all the breakfast foods. It's probably my favorite meal, breakfast in general. And then I usually eat it around brunch time. So I'm gonna go with that one.
All right. sunrises or sunsets?
Hmm. That's a good one. I would say sunsets in this, or sunrises, because that's like what I'm awake for, and like the opportunity to like witness the world waking up and like the energy of that coming in. But I do think that sunsets are a little more beautiful, but I think like energetically, I feel more aligned with the sunrise.
I love it. That's a good one. All right. Reading books physically in your hand or listening to audiobooks?
Oh, reading. I am a visual learner. So audiobooks, I've missed like 50% of what's happening. Like Ollie's like 2xing it. I'm like negative -0.5. Let me get this all in.
Honestly, one of my favorite messages I've gotten recently was when you texted me. I think your last retreat, maybe Peru. Do I have that right? Were you in Peru?
Peru.
And
Yeah.
you were like, "Hey, can you just message me when I get back? Because I'm an old school girl with a calendar. Like, I need to write that." I was like, "Yes,
Yep, my favorite calendar. It helps me so much. Just see it in front of
right,
me. But then I'm
yeah."
not very available for scheduling things in the moment. I'm like, I think, but message me when I get
That's
home.
hilarious. All right, what are you reading currently? What's your book that you're learning the most from now?
Well, I'm currently not really in a learning from a book. I
Mm,
kind of like burnt myself out on that. So I'm reading right now. Oh, must be in the living room. Um, what is it? Oh my gosh. It's huge. It's like 1,000 pages. It's like the something of water.
mm,
Forgetting it was in like Oprah's top list, and every year at the end of the year I look up the top 20 love stories of the year before. And love stories isn't always just like we're in love like romantically. It's like lost love, mother daughter love,
mm.
like best friend love, like all these things. So it's in that list, but it's pretty interesting. It's like in the 1900s in India is where it's based.
Oh
So
wow.
the man, what is it called? It'll come to me. But yeah, it's been really good. I'm enjoying it. Plus, I've been to all those areas in India that it's talking about. So
Right.
being able to like envision a different version of it has been really cool.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite things to do in this traveling lifestyle is when I get somewhere, I just like Google facts around it.
Mm,
Um, yeah, that's amazing when you can kind of tie history to the geography you're in and really explore it for yourself.
yeah. Yeah, it's really cool.
All right, the final warm up for you here, Courtney. You got to get your mind right. You got something going on. You got to think it through. Do you go to silence or you turn on some music to get through it?
Silence. Silence
Silence.
is like my best friend.
Yeah, I should have known that with all the meditation you do, huh?
But I do like really gentle, peaceful music, but more because it like invokes
Yeah.
that silent place. But
Yeah, I love it. Speaking of music though, because I know you are also a big Trevor Hall fan, have you listened to his newest album?
have not. I mean, write that.
Oh, yes, you better pull that up. Let me make sure I get it right. It's on my frequently played
Ooh,
list here. It is Trevor Hall and the Great In Between, live from the barn.
the great in between. Maybe I
Yeah.
have. When did he come out with it?
Now you're testing me. Now you're testing me. Let's see here.
I feel like
2024, it says on Spotify. It's live
okay,
from
maybe
like the
I've heard a
backyard.
few of them.
Yeah. So they did it in like a backyard in Colorado somewhere.
Cool.
So like you hear like the
Love that.
crickets and stuff. It's pretty neat.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I love me some Trevor Hall. I'm gonna go see Sat Song this weekend. I'm really excited.
Nice. Are you feeling warmed up, Courtney?
I'm feeling warmed up.
I
Yeah.
love that you said you're a lot and that you would come in a little too much if you had coffee. So I appreciate that. That's very funny.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm
so talk to us about your journey and the growth you've come across with Wholesome Alchemy and the evolution of that.
hmm. Yeah, Wholesome Alchemy, I feel like has been my biggest growth journey of my life. Being
Which
a
is
school
saying
teacher.
something because your life has always been, ever since I've known you, you've been
Yeah.
growing constantly. To say this is the biggest is huge, right?
Yeah. Because it's a different realm that I had never moved through before. Like business
Mm,
is not, that was so unknown for me being a school teacher and then opening a business and like running a business. Like I've grown so much in my mind, I would say, through Wholesome Alchemy and in that sense, like the business sense, so many new lessons, really understanding the difference between like clients and friendship and where are those
mm,
boundaries and like because that's still a little wonky for me.
right.
My clients are my best friends, but then it's like the boundaries don't exist. And I've been having, as I've gotten more and more and more and more people in our community, that lack of boundary can be exhausting. And so that's been a beautiful, expansive, tiring.
Yeah. Well, because that's not your boundaries aren't your normal nature, right? Like
No, no
you're more
boundary.
about trying to break through boundaries and get to that true person. What would you, how are you working that? Like, how do you balance that internal desire to help versus protecting yourself? Because that's really what you're talking about, right? Is protecting your
Yeah.
own peace a little bit too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this last year was like the real conversations with everybody of just like, I'm
Mm,
available, but I'm not always available. And like, think about me too before you ask the question. Like, if it's really me who you need to have the conversation with, I'm open to it. But if it's like something you can have with anybody, go have it with anybody because now there's hundreds of people in this community and I can't keep up.
yeah.
I can't keep up with it. So it's been good. And the people who are really close to me have really honored that. And you can see in the development of the people who've been in the community for years, they don't need me like they used to either. They're really
Oh,
capable of standing on their own. And so that's been a really beautiful thing to witness the transition of who started this journey with me are now the people leading the journey with me and like really stepping up in those spaces. And so, and that I can direct people towards them now too.
mm.
And like, that's been beautiful to watch those people blossom and really rise.
That's amazing, right? Because that's truly what you're after is not
Leading.
having people dependent on you, but dependent on themselves, right? And growing into that
Mhm.
role. How I don't know if I'm 100% right on this, but sometimes that it goes in contradiction to business principles, right? Where business wants returning, reoccurring funding. So you kind of always keep people needing you,
Yeah.
but you're trying to develop them to not need you, which I think is great.
Yeah.
How do you balance that with running the business?
Yeah. That's the business piece that I haven't been very great at. But ultimately, the beautiful thing that has happened through that journey, because I do have a lot of the business people that are in my world that are like, that's not smart business. Like, you
Right,
can't give them everything. You can't teach them everything to do it on their own. Because that really is my intention. It's like, come in these
right.
spaces, learn all the tools and these practices so that you can go home and you don't need me. You can do this on your own. But the beautiful thing has been that the community is so strong that half the time people aren't even coming for the tools anymore. They're coming to just be in that really sacred community. And people are really, the amount of people who say like we for Wholesome Alchemy now is so inspiring because they've taken ownership of that community and like we do this and we stand for
Mm,
this and we are this. And so they've continued coming back, but they've changed the role that they play in the community. And this coming year is really giving some of those people like paid opportunities and like really letting them step more fully into it. But they keep coming back. I mean, I
yeah,
have one woman who's been on retreat with me 10 times
love it.
in 4 years. Like, and this last Peru retreat, we had within the day after leaving, I had 7 people re-enroll for another retreat in the future because the community is just so real and so strong that everything happening is incredibly beautiful, but the community is what makes us unique. And people keep coming back to have that love and that ability to
Right.
be seen and nurtured and all the things that we offer that a lot of other companies doing something in the sort of the same realm as us, they just don't have that.
Yeah, no, I 100% love it. And I applaud you for not buying into the this is the structured business model you have to follow to be successful. And what you're talking about is you've just put people first, right? And you've empowered people. And if we go down, like if you and I were like, okay, today we're gonna make one person's life better by spending time with them, we would choose to do it for free, right? Because you're making a human's lives better. And that's what you're doing, right? Like you're investing in them, which will always, at least in my view, maybe I'm naive because I'm not a billionaire or whatever, but I think
Mhm.
it pays dividends much greater than financial rewards. But a lot of times financial comes with it when you
Yeah,
actually invest in
totally.
people,
Byproduct.
for sure. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's the best way to say it, right? Like you're running a business where the byproduct is financial success, but the product is great people.
Yeah. Yeah. And in that, our growth has been exponential because people just share their journey, their
Mm.
experience inside the community. The amount, like I've never ran an ad. Actually, I ran one ad when I had a last minute cancellation,
Yeah.
and I got one of our strongest community members through it. She always will be like, I'm the one ad. Like, but it's all just people bringing their community, then their people back into the spaces, and we're growing through word of mouth and through people's like genuine, you can just see and feel and experience the difference in these people after they leave our spaces, and everyone's like, I want some of that.
Mhm.
I'm coming next time. And it's just let us grow
I love it.
organically, naturally, and it's been really, really special.
Well, and it's in tune with who you are, right?
Mm.
Like you're not marketing something that's not in line with exactly who Courtney is. Like, and that's what I'll tell you is everything I see from you, I'm like, this is exactly who Courtney is. There's no filters here. There's no playing to get to a marketing scheme. Like, and that's respectable, especially in today's world where it's easy to take the bait for a quick fix here or there, get so many more followers by buying us here.
Yeah.
And and I love that you've just invested in you.
Yeah. And that's what's brought in the actual aligned people. Because when I first started learning the business journey and I was tapping in all these business coaches, one of the biggest things they taught me was that client avatar.
Mhm.
Like, who do you want to serve? Figure out who that is and speak to them. And what I've learned in the last few years as a service-based company movement, that it's not about who I want to serve, it's about who I'm meant to serve. And
Mm.
when I change my voice to speak to who I want, I'm actually limiting who is meant to be in my field. And when I just speak my truth in my voice, those who are in resonance will answer the call. And that's when our growth just took off, was when I really let go of who I wanted to who I was meant to be serving in this world.
I could probably end the podcast right there. That is amazing. That's exactly, yeah, that is unbelievable. And I love the shift in a word, but it puts a whole different meaning to the universe.
Mhm.
Here's something I was pondering the other day. I actually just did an episode about this. If I want to attract certain people in my world, I should probably show up with the same characteristics I'm hoping to attract,
Mm.
right?
Resonance.
Which is what you're doing, right?
Yep.
Because you're meant to serve these people, so you got to be the best you coming forward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah,
that's
it's that resonance piece. It's like getting in that alignment vibrationally, mentally, emotionally, to be able to be in communion with whoever it is that you're trying to
uh,
attract or connect to.
yeah. No, you're doing it fantastically, my friend. Can you share with us a moment or an experience since we last talked where you just sat back for a minute and like in my mind, like I've had these in classes where I just get like tears in my eyes. I'm like, wow, I'm actually doing this.
Hmm.
Was there a moment where you're like, okay, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing?
Ooh, that moment has happened a lot. I truly have that moment probably every single day for the last like 2 years, but
Wow.
I had a really big, big, big one in Peru on retreat, sitting in circle, and the quality, and not to say we haven't always had high quality souls, but we're just getting a higher developed soul entering.
Mm.
And like a lot of the other people have developed into those really high expressions of themselves. But right now I have people entering that I'm like literally like, holy shit. Like, I cannot believe this person just signed up and like I get to serve them. Like I want to be served by them and their gifts. And yeah. And so this last trip in Peru just had a lot of these high level, highly developed, because everyone's a high level soul. They're
Yep.
just highly developed souls.
Mm.
And we were sitting in circle and I had this activity I was guiding people through. And because of how deep we already were connected and how far along people were on their path, it just became this whole different activity than it's ever been before in that retreat because of the people who were there. And I stopped for a second. I was like, okay, guys, we can go here if you want to, but know that like, if we go here, this is going to be tiring because we have these other things and like, da, da, da. And everyone's like, oh, we're going there. Like, we're going there. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I was sitting there just listening to everybody share and like the profound wisdom coming out of these beautiful souls' mouths. And I was just like tearing up and feeling that like you brought them together. Like you
Mm.
created a space that allowed these people to be together, and we're all learning and growing because of the level of each other here. And like one of my favorite parts of our retreats is our transformational check-ins, where people just have the opportunity to speak and you just listen. You don't get to say something, you don't get to add on, you don't get to bring your piece. You just listen and hold the space for what wants to come through and be revealed. And yeah, so I was just, but I honestly am weeping like a third of the time when I'm leading retreats because I'm just like
Well,
my
you can,
heart's so open and it's just like so
yeah.
profound what happens in those spaces. Um, yeah, I said to Ali actually recently that the retreats feel like my lifeline. They just feel like this place where I get to be the greatest version of myself I've ever met. And I
Wow.
look forward to them so much because my best self is invoked in those spaces. And as much as I love doing it for others, like I've realized like there's a degree of it that's a little selfish too, because like I get to do it for me too. And I couldn't do what I was created to do if those people didn't show up in those spaces. And it's just, yeah, it's incredible to really be on like so clearly aligned with my path in a way that I've always been, but it's never been like this. So
Uh, Talk us through that journey a little bit, because right, how did you, how did that path become so aligned, right? Because you've had to grow and the past change, right? Our past change as we grow. How do we stay in alignment then, right? Because how do we make sure that's not a fleeting alignment?
yeah, I mean, I check in with spirit a lot. I have like the same two questions that I ask when things are going great, when
Mm.
also things are not going great, when I'm feeling certain, when I'm feeling uncertain. But in those defining moments on both sides, I always will just sit down in meditation and I will just ask, who am I meant to serve and where do I go from here? Who am I meant to serve and where do I go from here? And that for me, and then I just sit and I just listen. And sometimes I hear a response. Sometimes it's a day later and I'll see an article that is like so clearly telling me the next step. Or I overhear a song lyric when a car drives by.
Mm.
The intuition piece is my answer.
Yeah.
But I check in a lot. I mean, I check in, a couple times a month and just make sure, even though I know it, it's like I often, when we get really aligned on our path, we can get stuck then. And we
Oh,
stop that growth and that transformation that wants to keep coming because it never stops.
right.
So making that space to ask the question, like, what's next, keeps the growth happening. Because one thing I learned in my master's program that really stuck with me was this teaching of how if you stop growing and you're holding others, you've stopped their growth as well.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's like, I need to keep going so this whole thing can keep going.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, right? Yeah, I've seen that in leadership before too, right? One of the worst things we can do to another human being is put a ceiling on their growth because we're afraid to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see that a lot in the world I work in. A lot of times when people step into becoming teachers, there's like this egoic piece that says, I can no longer be a student. But the greatest teachers know that they're always students.
For sure.
There's always more. There's always more. So that's something I'm really grateful for too, is like being a student in my world. And I have some really incredible teachers who've been guiding me along the way as well.
So talk to us about that. How do you balance the time? I guess let me preface this. When a business starts getting successful and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm making it, there's a tendency to push more energy into the business to keep the growth. But like your individual growth outside the business area is essential for the business to grow. So how
Mhm.
do you balance like, okay, when is it time to step away and go invest in myself and make sure like I am growing on the inside as well?
Yeah, for me, it's been in the ebbs and the flows, and often it can be the flip for some people, but for me, it's like every time Wholesome Alchemy has like reached this new peak of almost like where we're at no longer needs me to hold it. Like it can hold itself. And in those moments for me is I always, instead of like your example of like, those are the moments you keep pushing to keep growing. I'm the
Yeah,
opposite. In those moments where it's like, oh, here's a breath for me. I'm going to take this breath. I'm going to let it just move organically right now. And I'm going to come back to me and I'm going to take a program or go on retreat with one of my teachers or just disconnect for a second and like go within and do my own work. Because then for me, it's like me realigning to the next level of me is what lets the growth happen. But if we keep pushing for the growth, but we don't evolve, it's going to stale out somewhere because the movement of the energy is moving faster than we are. So it's like we have to, in my experience, it's like taking that moment, the peak moments, and pausing and resetting and realigning and growing so that I am the momentum that's moving it forward.
yeah, no, that's fine. How do you balance the ego piece of that? Right? Because I think what you were talking about earlier, where people become coaches or teachers or experts in something, it's a lot of the ego that keeps them from going to admit they can still learn more.
Mm.
How do you balance that?
Ooh, the ego. Um, Well, I do think that because I'm naturally a heart-based person, that I don't have as hard of a time with
Mm,
ego. I would honestly say that I'm like the flip side of it. Elise tells me this a lot, like I'm too humble. And in many ways, a lot of people will tell me like that's hurt what I've created, its growth at least, because I'm too humble. Like I don't ever talk about the schools in Africa or the amount of money we donate, or like I don't talk about those things. Um, and I think it's that too humble piece because I'm like, well, I don't want to be bragging and I don't want to be,
right.
so for me, I'm like kind of the flip side of the ego. But one of the first things not one of the first things, but one of the retreats that I teach, Awaken from Within, there's a section in it where we talk about the spiritual journey and the stages of the spiritual journey and the kind of like the realms of the worlds we live in, like the middle world, earth, and the underworld and the upper world. And I had never even explored these concepts, but I was sitting in meditation one day and it came in. It was like this teaching came in so clear for this one session that I had no idea what I was going to teach. And it just landed profoundly. Like I was learning it as I was receiving it. And it speaks in there about the whole purpose of the middle earth, of like the earth walk, is to develop a healthy ego and a healthy personality. And
Mm,
like how those have to happen before we do our shadow work, before we go into the upper realms of unity consciousness. We have to first have a healthy ego and a developed personality in a healthy way. And so for me, that's been on my mind to like always keep working on my ego, on my personality, being the best version of me, bringing that
yeah.
into my shadow work and bringing that into the higher expressions of who I am. But a lot of people try to like, especially in the field I work in, really jump into the upper realms before they've developed a healthy
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
or looked at their shadow. And so they're trying to lift up, but there's all these things holding them down because they haven't done the work. And yeah, a healthy ego is a big piece of it. And yeah, how do you create that? How do you create a healthy ego? I mean, humility is a big piece, like
Yeah.
looking at the people who are you're learning from, being inspired by people who are further along the path than you, looking at how far you've come, where you started, but in a form of love and not like I'm better than because
Right.
of these. It's like I'm who I am because of these things.
Getting out of that comparison mode, right?
Thief of joy.
Yeah. Thief of joy. And it's weird though, right? Because like business is a lot of comparison. If you're just looking at numbers, like you're always comparing numbers from one month to the next. And if the numbers are down, you had a bad month. If the numbers are up, you had a good month. But that's not necessarily in line with, did you make people better that month? Did you
Yeah.
did you touch one person in a month, you made less money, but you touched them so deep their lives forever changed, right? And that's, you can't quantify that. And I think that's one of the things that makes humans so unique, is what we can quantify isn't what really brings most of us internal joy.
Yep. Service.
It's,
That's like such a big piece of it.
yeah.
It's funny you say that because this is where I say like business is not like anyone who comes and looks at my business is like, oh, what is happening? How are you doing this? Like, I'm like, I don't even pay attention to how much money we make. I pay attention to how many people we serve. And
Yeah.
like, so when people ask me questions about money, I'm like, I mean, I know we make a lot of money, but I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you exactly how much money I make every month because I look
Right.
at how people we're serving and like the impact that we're making. And because for me, I've never been money motivated. And so when I make it about money, I get more disconnected from what I'm actually doing. It's like, how many people did I serve? Not how much money did I make? Because it's not why I'm here for
I
me.
love that. What do you think? Just go hypothetical with me. What do you think if our listeners, when they hear this episode, go out and go, you know what? I'm going to try to make as many people better today as I can.
Mm,
What kind of world will we be in?
yeah, it'd be a really beautiful world. A world where it's a world that looks more like it's supposed to,
Yeah,
because a real world. Because I always tell people that on retreat because people are like, I don't want to go back to the real world. And I'm like,
right.
hold up. This is the real world. Like, this is real. This is how we're meant to be together and speak to each other and see each other. Like,
Hmm.
the world that we live in, that's not real. Like, that's as fake as it gets.
Yeah,
But yeah, if we could live in love and like honor each other and see each other and support each other, everything that's wrong in the world would shift so rapidly if we made that choice.
yeah. And we need it more now than ever, right? Like you just look, it's just so many people not living up to who they could truly be. And we're in these self-made parameters that keep people boxed in. We're fighting over silly stuff that really doesn't nourish anyone's soul.
And I will say, because I say that I used to catch myself saying that like we need it more now more than ever. And I truly believe we're the closest we've ever been
Mm,
because more people are waking up, more
yep.
people are coming to their hearts, more people are using money to support the world instead of support themselves. And even though we have a long way to go, we've come a really far way. And that's just my like
No,
flip
I
of
love it.
the way
I,
I see the world. But it's like we are so privileged to be alive right now. As chaotic as it looks, it's because so much is changing and so much is being revealed. So a new earth can come forward.
I love it. Yeah, I 100% agree. I agree with that. We're the closest we've ever been, and we're also one of the most blessed times to ever be alive. Like we have,
Yeah.
for most of us, we have so much time that's safe. We're not worried about our personal dangers and all that, that we can really explore, hey, how do I give back? How do I make my little piece of the world better? And that's what I always stress to people is you don't have to make like, don't make it such a big picture. Like who in your world are you in contact today and make their day a little better?
Yeah. Small steps. That's my
Small.
thing. That's a similar kind of thing. I say that to people with everything you look at when you're looking at community connection, impact, it's like small steps. Hold the dream, hold the big vision so you know where you're going. But what's the small step that you can take? Because often when we just look at the dream and the big vision, we get overwhelmed,
Yeah.
exhausted. Like, it's like, how could I ever get there? But one step at a time, one impact, one conversation, one moment of your time, that's what brings you closer to the destination you're seeking.
Yeah. And it starts with those conversations and those steps that you make for yourself first.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's part of the community you've built, and the energy is that people are putting themselves first, right? They're kind of moving away from this idea that it's selfish if I take time away from this activity or and invest in myself. But what we realize is like we're our best selves when we invest in us first.
Yeah. It's more selfish not to, because the
Absolutely.
person who's showing up is not the highest version of you. And that impacts every single person, not even in your world, but I believe in the ripple. So it's like
Yeah.
the planet, like the entire planet is impacted if we do the work or we don't do the work.
Mm, absolutely. Courtney, talk to me about what excites you about the future? Because you're always got something going. You don't.
Ah.
So what is like projects, initiatives? What are you excited about in the future and the evolution of where you're headed?
Mhm. Yeah, so we are definitely in a growth phase right now, and the exploration of what does that look like and letting it be an exploration, because I also have the perfectionist in me who wants it to be perfect, and I've definitely learned that that's like not going to happen when there's that many people involved. Um, But so right now we're in this growth phase of like, what does the next level of wholesome alchemy look like? Because we're kind of at a point where it's either I start running more retreats, but I'm not teaching,
Mm,
or our retreats get larger and there's people who come in and teach with me. And like, that's kind of been the play because community is the key. So it's like, can we get bigger and still hold that community essence? Or is it this other path? And we're gonna explore the growth piece first, because there's this part of me that like I want to be on those retreats and connecting with all the people in our community. I don't want to have people in the community that I don't know.
right.
And so that's like, I just brought on a few people on my team to start holding the spaces with me and doing breakout groups. And like, so that's like inner evolution, is just like we're getting bigger. And I've learned this the hard way, that I have to be prepared before it happens, not figure it out as it's happening. And
Right.
so it's like doing that now, bringing people in, getting them ready so that when we open to the next level, we're ready to hold it. But then also the sanctuary. So getting a physical location. So we're going out to Honduras in like November to look at land on Lake Yahoa, and to just like really get a grounded community and retreat center that gets to hold the vibration always. Because right now we just kind of touch in and out. And it's like we have to cultivate that energy everywhere we go. But if we were to have a physical place where
Mm,
that could be held. And it's going to be so much more. Of course, there's going to be a little school on there for all the local kids. And we're going to have like community meals on Sunday and give away all of our extra products from the greenhouses to the local communities, and really be something that gives back more than we take, because
yeah.
that's really big. But I think those are like the big things that are happening. It's like we're growing, and what does that growth look like? And how is it growing in a healthy way? Like I could easily rush this. Like I
Right.
keep capping our retreats and having to say no to people because I want it to be what it's always like. I want that level to remain
Sure.
of all of it, all of what it is. And then yeah, that physical location is really exciting because I have never lived in a city as long as I have here. And I'm feeling it. So I'm like,
Yeah.
get me in by water between mountains away.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, yeah, that's a big plan there for sure. Because and that's where your heart's been for a long time, is the education piece and taking care of local communities
Yeah.
and farming, huh? You're gonna grow some food.
Well, we're gonna hire that. Well, that'll be Andrea. I don't know if you've met Andrea Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's coming. She's a part of that team, and she's going to be running the greenhouses and the ground project for the food. Because that's not my realm of genius, but
Yeah.
he is hers.
Yeah. What, talk to me about, I think, and maybe it's just a circle I run in, but that's a very common theme of people I meet is going back to like a simpler life where we have our area and we grow food and we take care of people. How do we continue to spread that message? How do we continue to show that there's more if we choose it?
Yeah. I'm a big on being the example.
Yeah.
It's like finding that inner peace, because that's ultimately what those experiences
Yeah.
allow us to have. It's like, I want to just have a peaceful life. I want to feel joy and love. And so being that and moving through the world as that, and people notice, people feel the difference, people ask questions, and it's just this ripple effect, right? But it's like my book, just be you. Like
Mm.
find the purest, most aligned version of you. And that is for everybody, slowing down, going within, having some quiet. Like that's our natural way of being for everybody, even though a lot of people have never touched it, so they don't know that. But once you touch it and you experience it, it's like you can't go back. You can't go back to sleep. Like that's really what
Mm,
it is. Like
for
once you wake
sure.
up, you can't go back to sleep. And so you have to just be the example, even in the hardest moments, even in the craziest environments. It's like you're showing the way, you're leading the
Yeah.
way. That whole, there's a quote, I think Rumi said it, how we're just walking each other home.
Mm,
Yeah, we're just walking each other home. So it's like, be that, just be that and walk in the direction that brings you joy and love and happiness.
yeah, that's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about your book, Just Be You.
Mm.
That was a long time coming, right?
Yeah. I wrote it like 3 years before I published it. And thank you for editing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What what made you decide to write a book and talk us through the process of coming to terms with putting that out there?
Well, just like most of the things I've done, with the exception of schools in Africa, someone kind of forced me to do it. Like a lot of people push me into this is the humility piece, I think, where
Right.
I limit myself. I don't think I'm ready, or I don't, who am I? Who am I to do that thing?
Hmm.
So thankfully I've had people pushing me my whole life. And for that one, I can think of, one person who at the time I was living intentional community in Colorado when I started writing that. And he was one of the leaders there, and he would always say, like, you need to write a book, you need to tell your story, like you have to share the things that you're doing in the world and inspire people and show them like the impact one person can make. And he would always be on me, so I kind of just like slowly started writing it, and he like sent me books about being a writer, and like he was really like slowly kind of like nudging me. And I wrote pretty much, 90% of that book like 3 years ago when I was living, or 4 years ago at this point, when I was 5 years ago, I don't even know anymore. When I was living in community. And then when that all erupted and that whole big change happened in my life, I just put it on pause. And then this last year, it's just been sitting there like kind of nagging at me, and like people keep being like, write a book, you should write a book, and I'm like, kind of have a book. So I just went to Panama, and I took like 3 weeks, and I just finished it, and it was just like, I'm finishing this book. And that in itself was a journey, because I'm a different person who wrote it. And so trying to like edit and find the voice of that woman who wrote it and not the woman I am today, and be able to have it be this like concisive voice, this like one voice that is the narrative. Because me today is like, oh, I can expand on this. Oh, this could be more. Oh, this, and oh, I've had
Right.
these examples now. So that was really the world around me and the people in my world seeing me and pushing me to do more and to be more. And yeah, that's been a lot. I mean, that was the start of Wholesome Alchemy. It was Ali who's like, you need to start a business. You need to
Sure.
do this. You have something to bring. So thankfully I have strong men in my world that are like, take action.
Yeah. What was your biggest fear in putting the book out?
Yeah, and the book is a scary, it feels like the scariest thing I've ever
I
done.
agree. I agree.
Because when I'm talking to somebody or I'm teaching at a workshop or a retreat, you just take in the pieces and you feel the energy of who I am. And I'm really big on the energy piece. So part of the fear of the book was like, will people feel me? Will
Mm,
they feel me? Because so much of what I teach is actually in my being, not even the words I say, it's my energy. So that
right.
was a big fear of like, will people even be able to feel me? Because that's an essence that carries my teachings is who I am. So that was a big piece. And then there's the piece of just like people get to hold on to that. They are holding on to those words. They can come back to me like, you said it. And like it's a whole different level than just a conversation or giving a talk or something like that, where they take the bits and pieces. It's like it's forever ingrained in time that I said those things. And that's scary and also really vulnerable because now people get to see you more and more and more layers of you that you may have never shown all in one time. And so it's like this big revealing of your soul
Mm,
ultimately. And that's the ultimate stretch in a world where it's not always safe for your soul to be seen.
yeah, no, I agree. When you were saying, I just remember back when I released my book, I had those same exact things. Like, man, this is gonna be out there forever.
Mm.
Right. And people get to read it, make their own pictures of images of what the words are meaning, and you hope it lines up with what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
What's been the response for the book, and like, how's it been now that's been out for a little bit?
Oh, it's been great. Yeah, I haven't had a single negative comment or feedback about it. I get a lot of love. And people are like traveling the world with it. I get photos
Mm,
probably like every other week. I'll get a photo of somebody like reading the book on the beach in Panama or like in India. And because that's kind of my community, I like travel as a piece of
yeah.
it. Um, and yeah, or just a passage. Like literally this morning, someone sent me a photo of a passage and was like, this has helped me get through my week. Like, thank you for writing this. And so it's been really special. And those moments where people touch back into me to share how much it's helped them have been worth all of the uncomfortable pieces of
Yeah.
letting it be seen.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I had this fear too of like, what if I write the worst book in the history of humans? What if I release it as like, this is the worst book ever written?
No, you could not. I've never had that thought. I know I couldn't create the worst book, but
Yeah, that's
um,
hilarious. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for coming back with us. You are definitely an amazing spirit, my friend, and you keep that light shining because people need you, and you're definitely making a difference.
thank you, Jared. I
Where,
appreciate that and echo that back.
thank you. Where can our community stay connected with you best?
So my biggest is like Facebook, my personal profile on Facebook, but also our Wholesome Alchemy page has been growing as well. And then all of our like events are on our website, wholesomealchemy.com. And my book is on Amazon.
There you
But
go.
Facebook's definitely my platform where I just speak my truth.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Courtney, and we really appreciate you.
Thank you, Jared.